Hello, welcome back to the Rangers News YouTube channel. My name's James Black and I'm joined by Jordan Carlisle as we look at this afternoon's comprehensive 4-1 win over Dundee United in the Scottish Premiership. Goals from Yanis Hadji, Ryan Kent, Joe Rebo and Alfredo Morelos sealed a comfortable 3 points in the end. We're going to talk about the game in a bit of depth, but before we do, just want to ask that everybody likes and subscribes. Helps grow the channel. We've just recently hit 5,000, so we want to keep growing that, and it would be really appreciated if you do. So, back to the game. 4 changes to the starting 11 from Thursday's win over Royal Antwerp. Yanis Hadji came back into the side alongside Ryan Kent, with Ryan Jack and Leon Balogun coming into the team. James Tavernier and Kamara Ruth were both ruled out through injury, and Glenn Kamara and Scott Arfield dropped to the bench. So just, first of all, just want to get your thoughts on the changes and just kind of how you thought the team was going to line up before we can go into the actual game itself, Jordan.
I think most of it sort of expected. I thought that Hadji would come back in. I thought the fact that he wasn't there on Thursday night would sort of pave the way for that. I wasn't really sure how he was going to go in terms of the right back. Balogun did a decent job there on Thursday, but I wasn't sure whether home game, where he thought Rangers would have more of the ball, less need for a physical guy in there, that he might go with Jack and pack the midfield a little bit more and get all his options on at the same time. But I think Balogun showed again that that's probably the right decision, playing him there. And I suppose it made sense as well, probably bringing Arfield out. It was a surprise to see him start anyway on Thursday night. And he got 75 minutes or something like that. So yeah, it made sense for him to drop out. And I don't think it's a surprise to see Kamara on the bench. I think some people were surprised to see that, but I don't think that's a surprise at all, really, for any home league games. When everyone's fit, as they were sort of prior to kickoff, because he's absolute nailed on to play in the European games. And with it being a fixture in between, and also Rangers obviously looking to be on the front foot and stuff in home fixtures, I don't think that was a huge surprise. So pretty much, there weren't any real curveballs or anything like that with the team selection. And with Roof out, then it was obviously going to be Morelos leading the line. So fairly standard. Now, obviously, I think it was the team that finished in Antwerp, so some continuity to that degree as well.
So it was the opening 30 minutes of the game. I'm just going to kind of go through that first. For me, it was a really, really sluggish start to the game, and it had shades of maybe the last 3 or 4 league games. Rangers have kind of really struggled to get a foothold in the game, and the oppositions looked to press Rangers quite high. Were you thinking it was just going to be one of the afternoons again where it was going to be a long, turgid struggle? I think it's either 4 or 5 league games in a row before this. It had been a single goal Rangers had scored. And for me, kind of the opening, at least 20 minutes certainly had all the hallmarks of that. Was that kind of fair to say for you as well?
Yeah, and I think Dundee United came out and properly tried to play, which is a rarity. So sometimes, I don't know, it wasn't quite the same for me because it was more of a game than some of the other ones. It's more just that if Rangers aren't forcing the issue, if Rangers aren't slick, then that's it. There's nothing in the game whatsoever, but there was still stuff happening, and that was largely down to what they were creating, some decent interplay and some slightly standoffish, sluggish defending and reactions to danger and stuff like that meant that they had a few early chances. Yeah, and I don't think it was a disastrous opening in terms of in possession, but again, there's obviously I think there are a few questions. Just at the minute, if you look at things, it sounds absolutely ridiculous. When you look at Rangers' defensive record at home, it's been phenomenal all season. But I mean, Antwerp could have scored 5 or 6 on Thursday night quite easily. Perhaps should have done. And then in the early stages today, it looked a little bit shaky. Which you would think it would be the opposite of that. Having you lose Tav and bring in Goldson, you have a centre back at right back. Things might be a bit narrower, a bit tighter, and stuff like that. But I thought Rangers looked relatively vulnerable early on. But it's also rare that a team comes out and shows intent like that, and that they have some mobile decent forwards that created a few problems. So yeah, I think Rangers were relatively slow, maybe caught slightly by the sort of intent that Dundee United brought. But I mean, again, it's McGregor was brilliant, wasn't he? A couple of good, important interventions.
3 really big saves from McGregor in the opening 30 minutes. I want to focus on the first one in particular, because for me the first one was just, that was the biggest of the lot. That was, for me, it should have been a certain goal for Lawrence Shankland, linking up really well with Louis Appert, leaving Philip Helander for dead, and McGregor just coming out and smothering the chance. Just how big's McGregor for us? I mean, I have my criticisms of him, but at times like that, when you really need a goalkeeper who comes up big, kind of one-on-ones, you can count on him almost every single time.
Yeah, well, he did it midweek as well, and then yeah, I think it's a good point, the Shankland one, because it was a nice bit of play, and Hollander was sort of completely caught by it. But it wasn't as if he really overran the ball or took too many touches as such. Maybe gets his head up quicker, gets the shot off, but he was right on him, just right on him as soon as he went through, and sensed that danger where you could tell that Hollander was too slow in terms of his reactions and sensing what was coming in the link-up play. But McGregor was obviously on top of that already, because he was out and at Shankland's feet straight away. And yeah, the only goal the Rangers conceded so far this year at Ibrox was an early one against Motherwell, and that didn't turn out to be a disaster. Rangers managed to turn it around, but it would certainly have given the game a different complexion if they'd scored there. And they came into the game with a couple of wins and a bounce, and obviously full of confidence. So it was important to snuff that out, get through the early stages and then Rangers could build from there. Really.
Round about then, Ryan Jack also limped out. That's 3 players in 2 games. Heard Steven Gerrard saying after the game that he kind of got injured a little bit before it and tried to play on. I think maybe 10 minutes or so, he said, after he initially got hurt. Just how big a loss can Jack be in these coming games, especially with potentially facing Tavernier being out? We've already got Nathan Patterson's looking like not kicking a ball again this season. Bongani Zungu, repeat as above. These are 2 positions where Jack can fill in, right back and centre midfield. So it's of all the players I think to have lost, he's probably the one where it's more crucial. Just how big a blow is losing Jack, especially if he's going to be out in the next maybe couple of weeks?
Yeah, well, he's obviously shown how important and how much of an impact he can have since he's come back from the last injury. Obviously, the goal in the last game at home was brilliant. Maybe not what he's really absolutely known for, but yeah, his versatility is kind of important there as well as a factor. And it's another one where you have Zungu, this a situation where he would potentially get an opportunity if someone's out for a couple of weeks and you don't have that to fall back on. So it stretches the resources a little bit, and probably does kind of rule out the concept of a midfielder filling in at fullback, because it's really important. The thing is that with Davis, Arfield and Kamara, if Arfield, say after 75 minutes, and then after today a bit of a run out, is fully fit again, and you have all 3 of them fully fit. Davis went off a half an hour ago today. Kamara didn't have to play a full game. The 3 of them can get through 3-4 games in the trot in the middle, and it might not be a huge issue.
Do you think Ryan Jack going off earlier probably influenced bringing Davis off, knowing that you're probably going to have less chance, at least the next couple of weeks? Because it's probably fair to say, given Jack's injury history, I think I look back at it over his 3 years at Rangers, and he's missed something like 60 games through various injuries in just shy of 4 seasons. So it's probably not unfair on him to say he'll miss at least a game or 2. So with Davis at his age, the point is in his career, was that substitution later in the game just a case of kind of wrapping him in cotton wool and just being a case of shit, we might be needing to put a wee bit more strain on him?
Yeah, I think there's every chance that they could have actually taken both off anyway, had the game got to that stage and been won. But yeah, it's definitely a case of, with no Zungu, no Jack, if Davis goes, then you really are in trouble. That's when you would actually be short of bodies. And in terms of missing Davis and Jack at the same time would be a real issue, I think. So yeah, just in any way you can avoid that, get him off, and with big games to come and all that. So yeah, I think that probably did influence it.
For the second game in the spin, an injury and forced change kind of led to Rangers taking control of the game. I think 7 minutes after Jack comes off and is replaced by Glenn Kamara, the opening goal comes. Yanis Hadji getting the luckiest of touches, I think it's fair to say, on Joe Aribo's shot on goal. But how much did that change the momentum of the whole game?
Yeah, I don't think. I think it'd be a stretch to say Rangers deserved it at that point. But I thought just Aribo obviously come on to it. I just thought he was brilliant across the whole game. We've talked about him endlessly because he's either really hot or pretty cold. There's not really much in between. Today was one of the real positive days. I thought he was absolutely brilliant and able to sort of pick holes in the defense, and his control of the ball when it's at his feet is just sort of second to none. Especially when he, in terms of going forward and driving at people and stuff like that. I don't know. I thought Hadji knew maybe a little bit more about it, and there's absolutely no way it's going in without him touching it. I think Siegrist has it pretty much lined up, and I think there's a few times that maybe I certainly didn't think of when Rangers signed Hadji that they're bringing in a guy who's a creator, sees himself sort of as a playmaker, going in as the number 10, making things happen and playing through balls and stuff like that. But I think he's shown a few times this year he's got a bit of natural instinct in and around the box.
Can you just mention that to you there? Like, I know he's not going to be a long-term option there, but push comes to shove, he's got that wee predatory instinct that Morelos has, Defoe has it, because there's been a few of his goals of the chance as well the other night in the Antwerp game. Yeah. They get something Barisic's cross. That's proper number 9 stuff, and he's a kind of player who I think that kind of with the right point in the right direction, certainly you could get something out of him there.
Yeah, I think so. I think the physicality would maybe be an issue there in terms of providing a focal point, but it's a nice thing that he's able to get into those positions when that's not necessarily the role he's been given to start in. And if your team is lining up in the proper formation, he'd be nowhere near there, but he's prepared to commit and get in. That, like you say, that one against Antwerp, I think his goal, the winner against Hibs, managed to get across into the box, and it was a nice sort of deft finish. And I think there's an element of that today, being in the right place. If you're not in that position, there is no goal. Also, that's the sort of thing where he's showing his own sort of awareness of the game to get in there, because that's, he's basically in the line of a shot from Aribo where he could be hugging the touchline, he could be right out the way there, but he's providing another body in the box. And yeah, no, I obviously, I don't really think Rangers deserved it, but major turning point and some real positive points from the goal, because I think it was a really nice play from Aribo, and yeah, right place at right time.
And then moments later, the second comes.
No, that was Kent's obviously got a little bit of fortune there. I mean, he's had time to think about it in the air. I think we've seen quite a lot. It's maybe not the best thing for him, and he has a lot of time to think of about things in terms of shots from distance and stuff like that. Scuffed it a little bit, but it's obviously it's on target. And then when that's in, there's absolutely no doubt about what way the result's going after that. And it was sort of I think probably a collective sigh of relief from the team a little bit, and then things really opened up from there in terms of the quality of the play. I think improved a good deal.
Do you think just getting those 2 goals did it take the wind out of United's sails completely, or do you think it just kind of really bolstered Rangers? Because for me, I felt the first 30 minutes as kind of sluggish as Rangers had maybe been at times. I didn't think they were ultimately playing that badly. They were doing the right things, having the right ideas. It maybe just wasn't quite coming off as well as they hoped. And you think just getting those 2 goals in the space of a matter of minutes, so close to half time, it just gave them that wee extra bit of confidence that we were the better team, we were the better players to go on and just finish it off completely.
Yeah, no, I think they were pretty shell shocked, because they'd have come out and said we're pretty pleased with what we've executed so far in terms of the game plan, but they find themselves 2-0 down. And with Rangers, I think there's probably a bit of self-consciousness if you have, there's no Tav there. You have Balogun playing the role on the right. Can he actually provide some sort of threat? Are we going to be far too lopsided and reliant on Barisic, things coming down the left? How are we going to, I think Jared sort of said afterwards, Steve Davis was maybe a bit taken aback by the fact that they sort of swarmed to him and tried to stop him dictating play, certainly in the first 25, 30 minutes. So there was things to adapt to, and but I think it was clear to everyone, wasn't it, that if you go 2-0 up, there's no way this Rangers team's letting that go, particularly on home soil. So I think it's a bit of both. It was a bit of it definitely set them back in their heels a bit, Dundee United, and also boosted Rangers to sort of kick on.
And then the floodgates kind of opened a little bit, next maybe 7 or 8 minutes, at least up until half time. And Morelos had a couple of efforts at goal.
Has he missed that one?
Oh, I know. Does it no sum up Morelos though, in that he's one of these players who he's either going to have chances like that where he should score and doesn't, and then he'll either rattle one in for the edge of the box, or it'll hit off his arse and go in. I mean, I think it's just above his shoulder today. It happened for the fourth. But it looked like going to be an absolute thumping from there on in.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe it wasn't 3-0 at half time. Balogun, channeling his inner Cafu, takes him on the outside, brilliant cross, so inviting. And literally all he needed to do was I don't know if he was even 2 yards out. I still don't actually really know how he hasn't managed to get over the line, because any solid contact from the way his body was facing, it literally has to go in. So, I mean, surely even though he's got one off a random body part, he'll be having nightmares about that one tonight, because if he just sticks his neck out, it goes in. So it should have been, totally out of sight at halftime. But I thought, the confidence was flowing through at that point, and there was some really nice football at times, I think.
And half-time came and went, and as soon as the second half had restarted, Joe Aribo gets the goal. His first half performance deserved.
Oh, absolute worldly of a strike as well, just so pure. And I just thought he was brilliant. And it's so frustrating that way, because I think a lot of the time he doesn't bring enough in terms of his end product, whether that's a pass or a shot. A lot of the time that's where he doesn't have, or where he lacks the quality that he has in the rest of his game. But it was an absolutely brilliant finish, and I had absolutely no chance for the keeper, despite the angle favouring the keeper.
Is that his best role for Rangers, being the one in the central midfield three who does the running, who harries the opposition players, and lets the likes of Davis and Kamara sit a bit deeper and kind of look to spread the pass a bit more? Scott Arfield's kind of similar for me in that he's always the one, when you watch when Rangers press, he's always the first midfielder that goes to the ball. Is that where Aribo's best suited for us, or is it that kind of more attacking, kind of number 10 or wide left role that he's flitting out of sometimes?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm less convinced by an Aribo press than I am from an Arfield press. I think if you're the player on the ball, you'd be more concerned if Arfield's hurtling towards you in terms of the threat, physical threat that he brings.
Really well today at times.
Yeah. I think it's one of those ones where I still don't think you would rely on him to be that in that role in a big game. But I think if you give him a home game against a team where you know that you're going to have a lot of the ball, he's got to be in the team. And I think what's telling is that Jared's had massive praise for him before he signed, since he signed, and says that he could be anything basically. And I think it's telling that with basically everyone back fit prior to this game and in the weeks leading up to it, he's finding a way to play him every match. So on Thursday night, that's pushing him forward. In this game, it's bringing him back. But no matter who he's bringing in, whether it's, he'll bring out Hadji to put Aribo forward, he'll take out Kamara to bring Aribo back. He clearly wants him in the team, and I think you can see today why, because he has the ability to finish, just doesn't show it enough. Has the ability to create, maybe doesn't show that enough, but he was involved in basically everything. Rangers did well today. And I also cannot, this is not something that I think the scouts will be looking out for. It's not something that you pay £15 million in a transfer for. But I don't think I can remember seeing any player who's better holding on to the ball when you're trying to see out a win. He's unbelievable. Like, it's as if I think they've obviously, he's talked before about growing up in London, not playing proper 11-a-sides on grass pitches that often, playing in cages.
Football stuff,
yeah. And it's impossible to get the ball off him, and it's like FIFA Street. He just switches modes.
Isn't it? It's the big gangly ones. You just can't get the ball away from them. And do you think that's kind of part of the frustration where we go? That it probably is really hard to pin down like what is his best position.
Yeah, it probably is. It's I think it's a case of, as well, maybe when the pressure's off in training. This is in speculation, but I imagine he is being watched by the coaching staff in training a lot of the time. And then they're like, why is this guy only got whatever it is, 6 goals, 6 assists this season? Because he's absolutely tearing this up. No one can get the ball off him. He's so much natural ability. And he just hasn't really been able to convert that into consistent performances. But yeah, it's a case of, we've talked before about other people like Ross McCrory and stuff like that. It does damage you if you can't find your best position. Or people don't agree on your best position. But I think in Rebo's case, you can't say that right now because he's still playing every week, regardless of where he's deployed, because he's obviously seen as that important and that good that he can get in the team in a variety of areas. So, it was brilliant performance from him.
I'm going to be honest, after the third goal from Aribo, the game died a death after that. It was a game that was very much over. Rangers were more than happy just to do what they had to do to see the game out. United knew they weren't going to get back into it. I mean, prior to today, we'd conceded once in the league at Ibrox, and you can say what you want about kind of the defensive frailties against Antwerp in midweek. Even when we've had games like that in Europe before, like Benfica, where defensively it's been a bit of a shit show. And then, the following game in the league, it's fine. So yeah, it became kind of just patterns and seeing the game out, and then there was a kind of frantic wee 5-10 minutes where it was subs aplenty. We had Morelos making it 4-0 with a goal off just the top of his shoulder, and then with Borna Barisic and his missed penalty. No, it was an absolute stonewall penalty. So I want to just talk about that a wee bit. The penalty itself, stonewall penalty for me, but it was a bit of a poor effort from Barisic.
Yeah, this has stuck with me for ages. I can't remember what it was. It was a major tournament a while ago, and the commentator at the time, brought up stats about left-footed penalty takers, and their record in comparison. Obviously, the sample sizes differ because there's a lot more right-footed penalty takers, but their record is very poor. And
someone mentioned that on Twitter earlier on. Actually, just saying that from a body shape, left-footed penalty takers seem to be that bit easier to read.
Yeah, I think so, and a lot of the time it's, this is also going into the realms of speculation, but a lot of the time I find it's cultured left-footed players who use their instep, and then that way, the body shape can give them away. I think it was probably a poor decision, realistically. If someone, a goalkeeper and a goalkeeping coach, have 2 tapes of you taking penalties and they're both the same side, surely you got to go the other one, because if he's not taking any, the only information that keeper could possibly have is that he likes going to your left. So the percentage call for him there is to go that way, and if he's wrong, he's proven wrong, but he's making a call on the percentages. So he should have went the other side. Obviously, players will go sides that they're comfortable on, but if you're going to go with that, he needed to take it like he took the second penalty and try and take the keeper out of the equation by sticking it in the top corner. But obviously, the first penalty was poor on Thursday night. Unbelievable. The keeper didn't save that, but I mean, a lot was unbelievable about Antwerp's keepers. But yeah, it's disappointing. It's a situation where Rangers don't have much in terms of natural takers, but in terms of, the thing is that Rangers have been playing so well that it actually hasn't really mattered since that Morelos miss in the League Cup final last season. It hasn't actually mattered since then. So I think plenty of people will take that, not scoring penalties so you don't win 5-0 or 5-1, rather than being poor in games and needing to be bailed out by penalties, or missing penalties in serious situations. So yeah, it's something that he needs to work on. That the problem now is that realistically the next keeper is going to be like, oh well, he's missed his last one to left, so he should go right. So the thing is, if he goes left and keeps his options open there, he can go both ways. So it'll be interesting to see if he stays on it. I'd be surprised if he's hooked after missing one. But I mean, he's taken 3 so far, 2 relatively unconvincing and 1 absolutely perfect one. So yeah, we'll see on that front.
Now, the penalty itself was won by Alfredo Morelos, who had scored just a couple of minutes prior. Me and Cammy spoke about Morelos a bit the other day. How good was he this afternoon? Because for me, I thought he had another really, really impressive afternoon.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one, because I do just think Rangers are so much better when he's playing the number 9 in comparison to anyone else. But it also has been frustrating. I've found it frustrating watching him this season, because realistically, his returns in terms of goals haven't been anywhere near good enough in terms of the chances that he's got. So that one today, I suppose we talk about it and be like, oh, he would normally bury that, but he hadn't scored since August at Ibrox in the league. So the reality is that he doesn't normally bury chances, because he's actually been very wasteful in terms of his own finishing. I think that's a reality, that it doesn't really matter what side you are on the debate. Do you like him? Do you not? Do you think Rangers need him, or do you not? His finishing has been poor, but his overall play in midweek on Thursday night was brilliant. Sometimes I think his first touch can be a bit, just bounces off him. That's not been the case in recent games. His movement's brilliant. Link up play, unselfish and stuff around the box a few times as well. So Rangers are going to miss a lot when he's not there. It's just a difficult one to quantify, because you think, oh, if you lose a striker who scored 12 goals in, I don't know, 30 odd games this year, oh, you can replace him for any money, but it's not going to be a big fee. But in reality, I don't think that's the case, because Rangers have spent money on strikers and they haven't found someone who can lead the line as well as him in terms of general play. So it's an interesting one for me, I think.
Do you think we're seeing now the kind of true Alfredo Morelos, in that I don't think he's doing anything now that he's never done during his time at Rangers? He's always been this type of player. He's maybe getting played in a slightly different role, but he's always shown he's had the attributes to be a really good kind of link-up player, to use his body to bully defenders and everything else that we've kind of sung for the rooftops about him. Was his kind of goal scoring, because I think his first season he scored, I think it was maybe 17, 15 over the course of the season, and all that, it wasn't in the team as consistently. But is he more one of these guys who'll give you just as much as he does and work great as he does in goals?
It's probably hard to tell, isn't it? Because I think he's had a very disrupted season. Some of that's his own making in terms of disciplinary stuff, and definitely at the start, because he was just nowhere near it at the start of the season. But yeah, last year he was just unbelievable. Anytime, especially in the European games, if you get any glimpse, you knew it was in. The finish against Porto, unbelievable. He had a few, going clean through as well, where he had a little bit more time to think about it. Finished those as well, lovely. Yeah, so it's interesting. Obviously, people get in real runs of form, and that's what he did, because at this stage last season he had 30 goals. 18 more than he has now, or maybe 17 after today, but that's some difference. But since then, so before the sort of football shutdown, he struggled, and then this year it's not been a drought. It's been a drip, hasn't it? Really, it's been a few games, then he'll get one. So maybe, and yeah, I think he's changed his style of play a little bit, but I think he'd be thinking when he gets older, he would like to think he'd be more reliable in terms of it won't matter what form he's in terms of an overall thing. Like, for example, that header today, he should be scoring that regardless of any context, because he's in the right position. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and maybe won't actually know the answer to that until he leaves and goes and plays in a different league with different players around him. and see what he produces there, if it's more the same or less.
The last bit I want to touch on, just to the game itself, in all that flurry was a number of substitutions. We saw Jermaine Defoe make his return from injury, Scott Arfield coming off the bench, Scott Wright continuing to get minutes, but we also saw the debut of Jack Simpson. Just want to get your thoughts on both Simpson and Wright, and just kind of how you think I've done. We've only seen Simpson today, but Wright also the previous couple of games he's had an appearance in so far.
Yeah, I think eyes just maybe drawn more to Wright in terms of what he was trying to create, in a game where there wasn't a huge amount to do defensively. Certainly after the first 20 minutes, looked at Wright maybe a bit more. I thought it was interesting. He basically came on when Davis went off. Actually, the first thing he did was pretty Davis-esque, sort of dropped into a bit of a pocket and pinged the ball over the top that led to Morales' goal. Thought that showed good confidence, sort of belief and his ability to pull stuff like that off. It was a difficult one, I say, because of the sort of the fizz was out of the game at that point. But I think he looks bright, and the fact that he can play centrally as well as out wide could be important. Yeah, so some nice touches again from him. Simpson, obviously, he'll be disappointed that he comes on and then Rangers concede near the end. Just the defending in general was a bit too standoffish, I think, for the goal. But he looks a big physical unit, doesn't he? And Clive Tilsley's talking about watching him before and being really impressed by him as a unit. He looks athletic, mobile. It's obviously hard to judge him on a very small amount of playing time in a game where he was never going to be properly tested or put under pressure. That's also going to be a thing, players playing without crowds as well, that could change things going forward. But I mean, he looks physically like a good specimen and a good fit. And the fact that he's left-footed as well to slot in there is positive. So yeah, I think both guys have certainly haven't really put a foot wrong as such. Haven't shown any signs of or that should concern anyone from their sort of first outings, I don't think.
Magic. So finally, man of the match.
I think Barisic was absolutely brilliant. Superb down the left. But I think Aribo, it's obviously he was given it in terms of the sponsors man of the match, and it's so hard to argue with that. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. But I think for Barisic, it's really important for him going forward. If you're the only one of the four fullbacks at the club, and how important they are going forward, the only one that's available right now, he plays a massive role, and I thought he was brilliant again. But Aribo for me. What do you think? Yeah,
completely agree. Aribo for me, he got it in the player ratings. So hard to argue with. It was vital to everything important in the first half came through Aribo, and I think although he kind of wasn't as solely influential in the second, he just strolls through games. When he's on it, he just strolls through games, and today he was on it. But that's all we've got time for this episode. We will be back with more videos during the week. We'll have a look ahead to Thursday's second leg clash with Royal Antwerp. Remember to have a like and subscribe and look back through some of our previous videos, and thanks for watching.